Hi, this is Vaughn with Spirit of Health. Today we're going to show you how to make a soup, vegetable soup, using our homemade meat stock, which we showed you how to prepare in the first video. So the first thing we need to do is, now that everything has been cooked, we need to separate the bone out from the soup. So I'm going to take my tongs here, and I'm going to get the bone out of the soup. I'm actually going to put it in this bigger bowl here. And if you don't get every single little piece, that's okay, because we're actually going to pour it through a sieve. So you'll make sure you'll get every little piece. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to separate the meat off of the bone. And there's some marrow inside of these bones. Now marrow is interesting because marrow is one of the most healing parts of the GAPS diet, if you're following the GAPS diet. And the marrow was used in ancient times. The most prized pieces of meat that they ate at the feasts and the festivals were the pieces of meat that had the most marrow in it. So what you can do to get this marrow out is you can actually kind of hammer it on a hard surface, and see that marrow kind of comes out of there. And you want to get as much of that out as you can, because that's very, very, very healing. So I'm going to just get the rest of this off of here. Here's the meat. Got one more little bone here. Alright, so all the meat is separated out now. I'm just going to kind of tear it into just little bit smaller chunks, just so it'll be easier to eat later. Now I'm just going to wash my hands really quick. Okay, so now we have our meat and our bones separated out. Now what we need to do is we need to pour this stock through a sieve into the pot here. And this is the pot we're going to use to boil our soup here in a few minutes. So I'm just going to pour this into here. And see, there was a couple parts I missed, but that's okay. That's what the sieve's for. Okay, so I got a couple bones in here I don't need, but I got a little more meat, so I'm going to keep that. Get rid of this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the meat right back into the soup pot here. Okay. Now, before I actually added that meat back into the soup there, that would have been just the stock without the meat. After I sieved it through, I ran it through the sieve, that would have been the stock. And the stock, just plain, is really good for infants. We actually have a 5.5-month-old daughter, Naomi, and she just started eating meat stock. It's the first food we actually introduced to her to heal her gut lining. It's also very good for people that have really bad diarrhea. So now that I've added the meat back in, and we're going to add some vegetables, now we're going to have the actual soup. So I have a bunch of different vegetables here, and I will just be honest, Jen and I don't necessarily follow a recipe. There are lots of great recipes out there. You don't necessarily need to follow a recipe. I don't know if we've ever even followed a recipe. We just take what we have in our fridge and we put it in the soup, and it always tastes fantastic. So you don't have to follow a specific recipe, but on the Spirit of Health website, the GAPSdiet.com website, the GAPS cookbook, the Internal Bliss cookbook, you have all kinds of resources from which to pull from to actually get some recipes if you want that. But you'll find that just making the soup will taste good just by throwing some things in it. So what I have here is some carrots. I'm going to just throw those in. I'm going to put in some cabbage here. Now let me tell you a little bit about cabbage. If the person who's following the GAPS diet, especially if you're following the GAPS diet, you want to make sure you don't use any really fibrous vegetables, especially in the beginning, because they can promote diarrhea and they can be issues for a lot of people. So in the beginning, if you know you have diarrhea or if you even suspect that they could be an issue, it's best not to do fibrous vegetables. Now that would include cabbage, that would include broccoli and cauliflower. You really want to make sure you get the stems cut off of there. But that would also include like Brussels sprouts, kale, really fibrous vegetables. You want to be careful with those in the beginning. But we're going to go ahead and put the cabbage in. We love cabbage in our soup. We love onions in our soup. And I'm also going to go ahead and put some kale in. This is fresh right out of our garden out back. So we love the kale in the soup. It's a great opportunity to put some really nutrient-dense vegetables in the soup, like kale, for example. Not a lot of ways people eat kale, so it's a good way to just throw it in the soup. Herbs are also excellent. These herbs are all right out of our garden. I got some basil here, some oregano, some thyme, some dill, and these are fresh right out of our garden. We don't recommend a lot of spices in the beginning because they can be hard, again, on people's intestinal tracts, especially if they have diarrhea or intestinal issues. So I might just stick with the fresh herbs in the very beginning. Now another thing, we were talking about the nutrient-dense foods, is seaweeds. And we have wakame here, and we have nori here, and there's also one called kombu that we use a lot. And again, a lot of people don't know about these or how to eat these. People might have them when they have sushi. That's what sushi's regularly wrapped in. But they're very nutrient-dense. People with thyroid issues, just a way to get a lot of minerals and nutrients into the body, is these very nutrient-dense seaweeds. So what you can do is you can break them up. A lot of them come in sheets. You just break them up and you just put them in the soups. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just put a little wakame in here. Very, very good stuff. And then all you need to do now is we have our soup pot here full of goodies and ready to cook. So we're going to put it on the stove here. And I'm going to put this on high. And then the one thing that you can do at the end of the, after the soup has been cooked, is you can add some fresh garlic or some fresh ginger. So the garlic, you want to actually press through a garlic press. And then we have ginger here that we have a grater, and we'll just grate some fresh ginger in that. But we usually do that at the end. You can actually do that in the beginning, but at the end we find that it kind of maintains the taste and the flavor of both the garlic and the ginger if you do that. So what we're going to do is we're just going to put the lid on our soup here. We're going to flip it on high, and we're going to bring it to a boil. And then once it's to a boil, we're going to lower it and we're going to simmer it just for about 25 to 30 minutes. Add our garlic and our ginger, and you have your soup. Now, when you're eating your soup, okay, now your soup's prepared, it's done, it's ready. When you're eating your soup, what they recommend, especially in GAPS, if you're following the GAPS protocol again, is adding some fresh, homemade, fermented foods to each bowl of soup. So the first ones you recommend is sauerkraut juice, and we're going to show you in a future video how to make the sauerkraut juice. But sauerkraut juice, whey, yogurt, or sour cream. Those are the initial ones that you would introduce. Usually just 1 to 2 teaspoons per bowl of soup. You can gradually increase it, but you're going to do that to the tolerance level. The final thing that you can do is after the soup is prepared, you can actually put it in a blender and blend it. And a blended soup is really good for people who have trouble chewing food, infants, or older people, or anyone who just has a problem chewing food, and it'll just make it very easy for them to digest if they do it that way. So we hope you enjoyed this video, and we thank you for watching it from our kitchen to yours. This is Vaughn with Spirit of Health, and may this food bless your bodies.